I guess for 3 hours with a break in the middle. This is a hands-on session, as you're probably all things with the computers in front of you. So a little bit, actually, this is going to be a juggle. So notice from Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, just a little bit of clarification. So we are a U.S. national lab, so we're not a company. In-Spire is not a software that we sell. It's what we create for our clients. We're a research organization creating new technologies. This happens to be one of the more robust packages that we have. So we actually do sell to people, but as anyone who goes through that process will tell you, our process for creating technology, for selling technology, and for maintaining it to an end user is complete rubbish. You don't want to use us for that. But if you really like what you're seeing and you want to talk about it, yeah, he can tell you about this. So we just want to get that out, that this is not something that we're trying to sell on it. You may have heard about In-Spire. That's because it's been around for quite a while. It started for us about 20 years ago when a client came to us and said, we really need to do a better job of understanding text. And they wanted a package. They could literally bring any text corpus to us in any language and have some ability to analyze that information. So one clarification, when I say any language, the corpus has to be all in one language, but it can be in many different, almost any different language. We can talk in detail about that later on or during the classwork. But that is what drove the creation of In-Spire. So the ability to analyze information in a non-linguistic fashion. So we had some great talks this morning that talked about latent semantic analysis, which are variants on those algorithms that we're using because they're non-linguistic approaches, so you can use different languages. So that's the sort of thing we're going to go with. This is an analytical tool that we use. The visualizations on there are not visualizations to present information you know. They're visualizations to help you understand the information about that data that you don't know. So that's the sort of approach to it. You should be able to manipulate, work with that information. And we're going to go through a lot of the basic tools that are in In-Spire. So again, this is an introductory course in In-Spire. There's a lot of functionality into there that we won't be able to get to during the course. On the other hand, if you happen to see a window that has something interesting and you have some questions about it, we will try to answer all those questions that we can as we go through the tutorial today. One of the key aspects of In-Spire was to address that keyhole problem that William brought up this morning in his talk. I have a presentation that we gave in 1997 that talks about the flood of information. Well, that was a long time ago, and I kind of laughed when I looked at the numbers on there. 15 years later, the flood of information we're dealing with. I can hardly imagine what it's going to be 15 years from now. But that's really the aspect what In-Spire was supposed to address. At the time, and today, even today to some degree, for many analysts, they have what they call the shoebox methodology. It's not just a title for methodology, it's an actual technique. They have a shoebox, they find an interesting piece of information, they stick it in that shoebox, the next question comes around, they go through their shoebox to find out what they're trying to answer out of that data. We wanted to move them to that point to turn the volumes of data into their friend, so they could take huge amounts of information, understand it in a large context, to drive down to the salient points that they were interested in. So with that, Dave Gillen is going to be your primary instructor. I am his overpaid, underqualified assistant on this one. And Dave will take you through most of the steps. And with that, I'll get out of the way and let you go.
And I hope you admire Richard's beautiful art that he created here. It's kind of inspired by the Olympic theme here, but he added the hyphen in the middle to make it In-Spire, because that's how we spell Inspire, with the hyphen in the middle. So a little Photoshop work there. But anyway, Richard covered a bit of the In-Spire background already, but I'll just cover a little bit more. Again, we developed this for the U.S. government. They came to us with a specific problem for analyzing text, large volumes of text. We're going to use it today. It's installed in everybody's workstation in a standalone mode, but we also have an enterprise mode, a client-server mode, where users and analysts can collaborate with each other and actually explore data together, share insights with each other. But we're going to be working standalone. It is commercially available. It's about $50,000 or so for a license, or somewhere along those lines. But it's like Richard said, Patel really isn't, PNL really isn't the way to do commercial software, but we can do that if we were so inclined. So In-Spire isn't the tool that's going to give you the answer. It's not the tool that's going to light up a little light on the screen and say, yeah, this is the magic piece of information that you need to solve your problem. It's a tool that's designed to help guide your analysis of data, to explore that data, to show you things and reveal to things that you already know, but perhaps to highlight some things to explore that you don't know about your data. So it's really a way just to help you explore and to find interesting things to learn. It lets you read the documents ultimately, but it's got a lot of visualizations that are on top of those documents to help you to explore that space. It's also a platform that we use when we do our research at the lab to enable that research to get out into the fields of users. So we use In-Spire as a platform that we can plug new capabilities, new visualizations, new algorithms into to get them deployed out to a user community very quickly.
So I should say that we've had In-Spire run in various forms for 20 years, and it still has active research. So there's 3 or 4 projects ongoing right now adding new functionality. So when you look at it, you might ask yourself, well, why did they do it that way? This is all client-driven research, and so it was meant to address certain workflows that they're using and certain tasks that they're trying to address. So it's not an answer for, it's not a completely general tool for every purpose, but it does tend to work for many different purposes.
So again, In-Spire helps you to find some of the non-obvious relationships amongst your data. You'll see in a few minutes that it provides some clustering algorithms to help provide ways to identify documents that talk about the same kinds of things, use the same kind of words within them. It handles both the qualitative and the quantitative problem spaces that it will allow you to see what your data is about, but also allow you to measure trends and measure some of the more numeric aspects of counting and looking at things in your data. And really the visualization really help you to learn and discover information quicker. So this is essentially what In-Spire does when you give it new data. And we're not going to go through the process today of giving it new data. We're going to use data that we've provided it already. But essentially what it does is it starts from the left to extract all the text that it can find in all the documents that you give it, and essentially creates a mathematical signature for each document that it finds. So it looks at all of the words that are in those documents, identifies the key documents, essentially comes up with a 200-dimensional vector for representing each document as to how strongly each document talks about a certain term, and also co-occurrences of other terms that are related to those key 200 terms. We call those cross terms. We then cluster them just using a simple k-means clustering algorithm to essentially find where those overlaps or those similarities are, and then project them into a 2-dimensional visualization, kind of similar to the one on the right there. Each dot there represents a document, and the labels kind of represent some words to essentially describe some of the documents that you'll find in that cluster. So when we get into the data and we explore it a little bit more, you'll kind of get the idea of how it works.
So the Galaxy View is one that's shown up, and I guess in a few presentations and everything. It's worth noting that while it's probably the most predominant visualization when we first created it, we have many clients who never or rarely actually use the cluster view when they do it. So that's not meant to be a required portion that when you're using In-Spire will be the one that pops up first. But you look at the other tools and think about the different ways and the different types of domains you might be in, because we've used In-Spire for many different domains, be it for biomedical, be it for other sciences, information, finance, many areas. And there's different sets of needs associated with it and different tools within the suite that are provided.
The other thing to stress is that we don't do any kind of natural language parsing. We don't look at the semantics of words. We just treat words as words. The words can be in any language. All we need to know is, for a given language, what's the white space, or how you break apart certain characters of an Asian language, for instance, into words. And then we treat those words essentially as our topics, for our vectors. So we really know nothing about semantics. We know nothing about what these documents really mean. We just look at them from a word perspective and group them together. So again, we don't have to train the system. It doesn't require anything to know about the data, other than a little bit about how the documents are formatted. So maybe if there's a title or a date field within your document. Some of the visualizations can be more powerful when they know things like that. You can work on any language. Again, all you got to do is tell it what your word boundaries are. It's pretty fast. I think 4,000 documents in a minute. That's a statistic from a couple of years ago. As hardware gets faster, we can process data pretty quickly. And it really runs on commodity hardware. So these are just normal PCs that we're just going to run on. And it can run on any normal PC. A laptop doesn't require a supercomputer, any kind of cluster or things like that.
Because what we're saying is, as computers get faster, then our clients just want more and more functionality added in. So that 4,000 has kind of become a stable point for us.
the website that you can go to find out all sorts of information, all sorts of things that you ever wanted to know or didn't want to know about In-Spire. It's all out there. So you can peruse that at your leisure when you get back to your various places that you've journeyed here from. This is, I guess, the end of the slides. This is a kind of an agenda of what we're going to do today. Essentially, I'm going to go through each part, probably talking and demonstrating from my system for about 10 minutes, and then I'm going to turn you guys loose on your own systems to explore a different data set, but using the same tools to go and work through some of these different tools and concepts within In-Spire. So it's going to be a very much a demonstration and then hands-on work, kind of reinforcing some of those same concepts. We're going to essentially go through an exploration of the galaxy and searching and reading for documents, finding documents by selecting them, grouping them together, collecting our evidence, maybe supporting or refuting hypotheses, looking at the time tool, our faceted browser tool. And the fifth part, we're probably going to leave about 45 minutes to an hour at the end. It's going to be yet another data set that basically there's a threat in there. There's a problem that needs to be solved that you guys can essentially work through trying to solve the problem, putting yourself into the analyst mindset, using the tools of In-Spire to try to find what's going on in this mythical city of Alderwood. And this is actually data from the VASS 2005 or 2004, I don't remember which year, one of those challenges. So hopefully you've never used this data before and you don't know the answer already, but if you do, just kind of keep it to yourself. But you can work individually, you can work as teams, you can work with the person next to you, or however you want to do it. Essentially, we'll work through it, we'll talk about it afterwards, we'll talk about how different tools might help or not help with that. Okay, so with that, if you haven't already logged into your machines, you'll want to do so. On the back of your badge, there's a username and password that you can use. And essentially just take a couple minutes and log in. And we'll essentially start off everybody at the same point where once you've logged in, you just have a blank desktop.
Do you know if LOCOG get hold of you?
I'm sorry?
LOCOG, the London committee, the ones, the brand stuff.
Okay.
Don't let them get hold of you with your photoshopped in.
Oh.
That's it. You won't be going back to this.
Oh, Richard did it, wasn't me.
Yeah.
They'll come after you for your Photoshop work there.
Yeah, but the Olympic symbols weren't actually in there.
Oh, you kidding? Once everybody gets to the desktop, you should see over on the left side of your screen, you'll see an In-Spire icon. Just go ahead and double-click on In-Spire.
A couple of you might get some firewall windows that pop up. If you do, just say accept. I think there's 2 of them. And seem to get through just fine.
And if anybody has any problems doing anything, just raise your hand and me or Richard will come over.
Oh,
I think they're just the ones.
So how long are you here for? With you two come over just for this session, or is there other?
So Richard is staying for the whole week. I'm leaving on Thursday morning.
Wow. And is that just for the VASS?
Just for VASS. Yep. Yep. Okay, so once everybody's at the screen, hopefully if you're not there, you'll be there soon. But this is essentially the welcome screen, the getting started screen. It's also the projects tool. So In-Spire it works around the concept of a data set, and data sets can be organized into projects. We haven't really done any kind of organization of our data into projects at all. We just have one called the home project. But what we've done is we've loaded your data, your screen with three different data sets. Voice of America 2011, MPQA, and Alderwood. So the Alderwood one we're going to save for the end. That's the one that we'll explore and try to solve the puzzle in there. I'm going to demonstrate everything using the MPQA one. So if you wanted to just click on the MPQA one, you can kind of follow along with me as we do things here, and you'll be able to kind of, if you want to, you can click the same things that I click.
What should we do if we don't have that? I just have Voice of America.
So click that home project on the left. Right below, on the left-hand side there, there's home project.
We didn't. She's missing the data sets. They need to be imported. They're probably not marked public.
Oh, did we miss a machine?
We missed a couple of machines. Looks like. Yeah. Do you want to just go into the viz table?
Yep.
Do that. Okay.
Set that up really quick.
Okay. So I'm going to demonstrate everything using this MPQA data set, and then I'm going to turn you guys loose in a couple minutes to explore with the Voice of America data set. So if you ever want to switch between data sets, all you have to do is click on this little projects icon in the upper left-hand corner. That'll bring back up this projects pane, and you can just click on the other data sets to open them up. The current data set that you're working in is always in the title bar of the screen at the top. So in this case, I'm in Voice of America. I click on projects and switch back to MPQA. Now it says MPQA with entities. So we'll start here. This data set is about 530 news articles collected between the summer of 2001 and the spring of 2002. It was mainly put together to help tool developers for measuring sentiment, so measuring the positive or negativeness of the speech that's in the text, and also clustering algorithms. It was basically put together around news articles of 10 very significant news happenings that happened during that time period. So you can just look at the screen that comes up here at the cluster labels, and you can already maybe get an idea of some of the things that these 530 news articles talk about. So we have a label here that says space station, one here that says Kyoto Protocol emissions, another one that says Mugabe, Zimbabwe election. We can already start to get the idea of some of the topics, some of the things that we're expecting to find in this data set. A common way that analysts might use a tool like In-Spire is essentially to do some searches and to search in your data set just to see if there's other concepts here besides the ones that come up in our cluster labels to see what else is in the data set. So actually, before I go there, so this is the Galaxy tool of what we talked about, Richard mentioned before, where each one of these documents, each one of the dots represents a separate document within our data set. Behind us, you may see a screen that says Document Viewer, and if you don't, you can always click on Doc Viewer in the tool at the toolbar at the top. The Document Viewer is where you can actually read documents. That's where you can actually see the raw text of some of these documents. So if we wanted to do a search, for instance, I don't know, I'm just going to search for my favorite American president of Bush. He's not really my favorite, but just... So if I type in Bush, it's supposed to come back immediately and show me the documents that are okay. Excuse the Did everybody do that? Just kind of hang there? That's awesome. Isn't that great? This is what we love about doing demonstrations like this. Okay. I love it. Okay, anybody know any good jokes? Okay, so let's see. Let me see if I can clean my machine up here, and then we will work on how we're going to fix this for everybody else's. Okay. Searching this one. Yeah, so searching in that other data set does not work for some reason. So okay. All right. So if you are hung, if your machine hung, we'll see if we can force In-Spire to quit. I'll walk around and help you. This is if you're not real savvy here using like Windows and killing processes, you essentially want to go into the task manager and kill anything that starts with Java. It sometimes doesn't die gracefully that way, but you can try. You can try. Usually what we have to do is go into the task manager to processes and kill anything that starts with Java. And then there's this thing called happy helper. Happy helper's not always happy, because it's not in this case.
Not always helpful.
Not always helpful either, no.
So kill anything with Java.
Kill anything with Java or anything that's happy, yeah. So.
If it's hung, is that right?
If it's hung, that's right, yeah. So if that does happen, we'll... That's wonderful.
Okay, so
I think so, yeah. Is anybody having trouble getting it to die and come back up? Okay. So let's switch over to the, instead of going into the MPQA one, let's just go right into the Voice of America one. And this one at least does seem to work for me. So again, I'm going to search for my favorite president. And what happens is that some of the documents turn green right after I do the search. And essentially, those are the selected documents. So after I do my search, these are the ones that match my term of Bush. So you can see that they're kind of spread all around this particular galaxy. We could do all sorts of different types of searches. We can do wildcard searches. So if I wanted to search for, I could search for Israel, for instance. I can also search for Israel with an asterisk after it, and it'll search for Israel or Israeli or other types of words like that. So all the typical wildcards that you might expect to work, they all work in a system like this. If I put in multiple words at the top, they're OR'd together. If I type AND in between them, then we can explicitly AND them. So if I search for United States, we get 2,150 documents. Some of those contain the word United, some of those contain the word States. If I put it in quotes, then I'll actually get the phrase. Where is the quote mark? There it is. So if I put my phrase in quotes, then I can actually just look for United States put together. If at any time I want to clear my green dots and just go back, I can just hit clear. So I'm going to make the text a little bigger here. So those are some ways that I might be able to do some searching to explore my galaxy. There's some other things that I can do here too. So you'll notice that there's labels on some of the clusters, but not all of the clusters. If I go under this little gear menu off to the right, there's a little menu called Peak Label Settings. And if I turn up my number of labels, make that a little bit higher, I can see it'll populate labels in some more of the locations. on the screen. I can also make some of the labels go away. But essentially, I can slide that to see the number of labels that I want. I can also have it add more words to each label. If I wanted to get 4 words or 5 words, I can essentially decide how long and how descriptive I want my labels to be. There's still some areas where it's not going to display any labels because it's still very sparse. And here I can use a tool called the probe tool. And that's this little green arrow up at the top. When I click on this little green arrow, now wherever I go and click on, it'll essentially display a label that's most descriptive of right where I click. So what is the part, like this cluster here doesn't have a label. If I click on it, all of these have to do with president and PO that goes off the screen. If I click on these have to do with China, Vietnam, South China Sea. So there's lots of different ways that without even reading any documents, I can already see and find and discover maybe some of the things that this data set is going to cover, some of the topics, some of the things that are in here. So what I'd like you to do at this point is to use this data set, and we're going to do a little exercise. So this is there's a royally, so think of royal, a major event that occurred during this data set. This data set was from 2011. It occurred in the United Kingdom. You could probably think about what it was. Maybe someone named Prince William. But anyway, see if you can find where in the galaxy this royally major event occurred. Use some of the searching, so to maybe try to search for some of the terms that you might think of that are associated with this royal event. Use the probe tool to try to find maybe where in the galaxy those labels are. And then if you really wanted to, too, you can also use the document viewer once you actually select some things to actually read some of the documents to confirm your findings. So I'm not going to search for the term, but if I were to search for something else, I can actually see these are my documents down here. These are my document titles and actually read some of the documents. So see if you can find this royal event that occurred, and then just maybe explore some of the other things that are in this data set. And we'll just use this time to make sure that everybody's recovered from our crash and just see what you can find.
So what was the task you were asking them to do? I got busy.
Oh, to find the royal wedding within the
okay.
list of events here. So if anybody's having difficulties finding it, I did find on the screen here where the where that cluster of documents is about the royal wedding was the topic that we were looking for here.
Excellent. Can I just check with the Boolean search? Is it just
You should use ands. You
Okay.
just explicitly the word and or. Yep.
right?
Do we get a prize for finding information?
No, no prize. I left my gold stars at home. So. So some other things that are in this data set, you can also see if you can find, and maybe they're evident from the cluster labels, but the tsunami and the Fukushima nuclear disasters in this data set. The execution of Osama bin Laden is in this data set. All sorts of uprisings from Arab Spring are in this data set. There's some elections in both in Canada, Thailand. There's some documents about Sudan, Libya.
Is there a way in which I can cluster them within the galaxy, so I can have my own mini?
So that's the.
So that will always be fixed.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
But now what we'll do next is essentially to zoom in or to focus on certain parts of the galaxy and to have it recluster around subsets of the galaxy. That's what we'll do next here. So while we're here, after we found the royal wedding documents here, I have them selected in my galaxy. Let me show you some of the other things that this visualization might tell us on the screen. If I look on the upper left, I have a little time histogram here. I can see in the course of my corpus of documents, the little green bump in the middle there shows where the selected documents occur throughout the whole timeline of this data set, so I can see right from a glance that this is kind of an isolated event. This isn't something that spans the corpus of my data. We'll get a little bit later to find out where in time what this occurred. We also have this area over here called themes. Themes are a step more abstract or higher level than topics. So think of a topic is a word or a couple words together that maybe describe a person or a concept. And a theme is a collection of these that are used together very commonly. So you'll see that there's a group here that was created, a theme, Prince William and Royal Family. So In-Spire knew that Prince William and Royal Family are used a lot together. It knows nothing about what those terms mean, but it created a theme because it sees those as things that are used together. Themes are ways, again, of finding topics that are used together in a significant statistically amount of way. So you can look at the themes throughout different parts of your data to look at to gain some more insight. And we also have individual terms. So these are all the terms that are used throughout my documents. Interestingly enough, security is one of the ones that came up kind of high. So there might be some documents maybe that talk about the security aspects of the royal wedding. We also have million in there, and maybe it's talking about a dollar amount of what the royal wedding cost. So we can get some ideas, again, without really reading documents, some things that we're expecting to find. So what I'm going to do now is show you the next step, which is essentially focusing in on a portion of the galaxy to get more insights, to get more detail. And I'm going to switch over to that MPQA data set, and maybe it'll work for me. I'd recommend that you not follow along, just so we stay in the Voice America, right? So, okay, so what I'm going to do here, for instance, is I'm going to search for United States. don't want to search. No one warned me. Did it to myself.
That's one thing we didn't do. We didn't test out that data set.
We didn't. No, we didn't. Okay. Yeah, definitely don't do what I do. I'll do it a different way here. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to just do a selection instead. We haven't really talked about selection, but if you just use your mouse and you just kind of drag over certain documents, it draws a box around them to select them. So I'm going to draw a box around, let's say, these documents here. I don't know, maybe these documents are all of interest to me. I don't really care about the space station. I don't care about Guantanamo Bay and the prisoners there. Well, I do care about them, but I don't care about it right now. I really want to focus in on just these. So once I select them, if I hit this focus at the top, what focus is going to do is take all the rest of the documents and get rid of them and recluster just the documents that I'm interested in. So sometimes what it does is it will display more descriptive cluster labels. It'll break apart my clusters into subclusters and essentially show me discrete groupings that have to do with just the documents that I'm interested in.
Can you quickly increase your text size?
Oh, yeah. So in this case, I had some documents that talked about some different countries. It's starting to break down some of those areas into more discrete topics. If I, again, let's see if we focus in on just the Mugabe election here, and we focus. We can see that we have lots of documents that talk about election, and then we have this one document down here in the lower left-hand corner. We refer to these kind of documents as outliers. Maybe this document is interesting. It's separated from the rest of them because it's very different from the rest of them. So if we wanted to, we can highlight that one, drag it over to the ignore, say focus, and now we can focus in on just those documents that were at the top. Now we see that these all have to do with Mugabe and election. Some of these labels don't really mean a whole lot to me because, again, we knew that all these documents were about Mugabe because we kind of zoomed in on it from before. What I can do is start outliering terms that I'm not interested in. So here, I can see on the left that Mugabe is in 43 of my 46 documents. This up the top tells me that there's 46 documents that I'm looking at. I don't care about Mugabe. I'm going to right-click on it and say outlier. I'm going to do the same thing for Zimbabwe. And then I hit this recalculate button. And now it's re-projected my documents again, taking out those terms and using other terms to try to find ways to cluster these documents. So now it looks like I have some documents that have to do with, however you might pronounce that, Svangiari. And some other ones maybe that talk about, I don't know what that is either, but something more with maybe other countries' view of the election. So it's a way that I can start to drill in on documents that I'm interested in. I can get rid of words that I don't care about, and I can start to see some other hidden relationships in my documents. If at any time I drill down into things that I want to just go back to where I started from, I can hit this little reset button here, and it takes me back a step, or it actually takes me back to my top view. I can also, once I clear here, I get back to the top.
So a quick design point there. So the question actually came up in back about the number of clusters. So when, years ago, and I do mean years ago, when we were first doing this, and we're doing the k-means clustering thing, we put in sliders and options. How many clusters do the users want and everything? Well, it turns out most of the users, they're not mathematicians, they're not computer scientists, they're analysts. That's their job. After years of effort with them, they didn't really care how many clusters in detail. So what we ended up doing, I think we're still doing it, is the square root of the number of documents.
Cube root.
It's cube root.
Yes.
Cube root now, thank you. Cube root now. So it turns out to be a very good number that most of them like. So we took that sort of flexibility out of it. Because from a user standpoint, as a design issue, that was not something they wanted, and just confuse the matter and raise other issues that they didn't quite understand. So that's the reason that you'll find that as you come into it, it will recluster them again down to that number of documents. So if you're looking at a subset, it will find the cumulative the number of documents for the cluster.
Okay, so I've switched back to the Voice of America data set, and what I'd like you to do as a little exercise is there's this cluster in the middle that says Gbagbo, Awatara, and Ivory. I don't know who or what or where Gbagbo, Ouattara are. Maybe you know, but I didn't know. So what I'd like you to do is essentially use some of the focus tools to figure out what or where or who is Gbagbo and Ouattara, and essentially what is the main topic that's discussed in this cluster of documents. So essentially use some of the focus, use some of the searching to essentially isolate those documents and see if you can get an idea of who or what or where these words are and what's going on here.
So you got the search, the selection of clusters, and the focus button to narrow down.
Kind of zoom in, yeah.
Zoom in. Any other tools you pointed out that I missed?
Nope, those are the ones, and just the document viewer, just to overall read documents.
If you haven't found the document viewer yet, let me know. We should talk.
Yeah. And this is a common theme that analysts might do, is they might bring up a visualization like this, and they might see some term that they don't really know what that means, so they'll focus in on it to try to get some more details and try to learn some more about what this topic, what this word means in this corpus of documents. So once anybody has some ideas, go ahead and shout them out or share them or...
Dave, you know, so right off the version, a lot of them have the blue cluster indicator on. Is there a quick way to turn that off? In case someone doesn't want it.
The gear menu, and do you show theme clouds? Or
Okay. So if you have the ability to want it on your theme view or on your galaxy view, bring up the gear menu, and then you can just click off.
yeah, I think there's a bug because when you hit the reset, it turns them on even though they're supposed to be off by default. So.
Okay.
It was the incumbent president, wasn't it?
Yes.
Who was supposed to have ceded power to the person who was elected in
Very,
the Ivory Coast.
very good.
That's it.
That's yep.
And then he didn't cede power, and then all sorts of talk.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yep.
How do you drag and drop? When I try and drag it, just fills enough box. So I want to put these on the
And the reason,
Okay, so yeah, so draw a box around them, and then the trick is that you have to take this green square up to the top and drag that to the equivalents. And now if you hit focus underneath there, it will take those documents out.
oh,
Yeah, that was kind of I went through that kind of quickly. There was a question about how to get it to ignore documents. Getting it to select documents is real easy. Ignoring them is a little trickier. You have to draw the box around them.
or select them in some fashion.
Select them in some fashion. Then take this green box up at the top here and drag that to ignore. And then use this focus button to basically make them go away.
Oh no, yeah, if you drag something here, and then you hit that.
I see.
And then that will take you. Actually, so advanced search is a word. You can put it when you do a search by example. Just like a phrase or a paragraph that you're doing. And it will strip your whole thing. That is a search.
Okay, so now you take this green box right here and drag that to the door and then hit the That's tricky. I don't know who came up with that. This is So if you click on time and say top of the Okay, fine. Yes, yeah, so there are language-specific stop words that we give it when we process data sets. Exactly, yeah. So that is something that's somewhat language-specific when we process the data that we can tell it to ignore certain words and or whatever the appropriate things are. So that indicates that you've read that document already. So it's kind of to give you a visual indication of maybe what's new, what you haven't read yet, versus things that you haven't read. Yeah. Okay, so hopefully people have had a chance to explore Gbagbo and Utara, where the presidential candidates in the Ivory Coast, and they didn't transition power over very friendly. And so they started a little skirmish there, a little disagreement over that. So that was essentially the essence of that cluster of documents. Okay. So while we're here, let's talk about some of the other things that we can do when we're searching. I'm going to just reset this back to everything. Some people have discovered already that you can not only search within this box at the top, but there's also advanced search. This box at the top it's kind of like Google. It's the simplest search interface. You just type in a word and it goes and finds it. But if you click on advanced search underneath it, it'll bring up different, more refined searching, more advanced searching to go ahead and search in your data set. So I could type in very complex expressions here, complex Boolean expressions with ands and ors and nots and parentheses, and I can do proximity searches and do all sorts of searches. I can also search just in different fields in my data. So this data set is actually divided up into different fields. If I just wanted to search for documents that contain Gbagbo in the title of the document, I can do searches like that. And we have another one that's search by example. Search by example is different from just your normal text search. What we do is we take whatever word or words you type in there, and we treat that like a document. We come up with a vector, and we project that vector onto the galaxy to essentially find documents that cluster most similarly to the search terms that you put in there. So some of those documents may not have they may not actually mention some of the words that you type in there, but they might mention words that are similar to the words that you've typed in there. So for example, if I typed in, United States of America, you can see that it highlighted a couple of those words in blue. The words that are in blue are some of those 200 words that constitute the vectors that we use for clustering. So those are statistically significant words, and those are going to essentially be used in our search by example to find documents that talk about things just like United and America. They may not necessarily contain United and America, but they're going to contain words that are used in conjunction with United and America a lot. So what I could do is I can actually type in a whole paragraph here. I could type in a representative example of text that I'm looking for. So essentially I can do all sorts of very powerful searches without necessarily searching for specific words. Does that make sense? Well, it's a little bit of an abstract concept. I don't really have a good example of it for this data. But let's just try it. United States of America. Type in search. We get this little visualization here that essentially shows how the documents, how quickly they drop off or how similar they are to what I typed in. So if I went to my Galaxy, kind of put these side by side. Let's see, where is my one document? So there's the one document that is the most representative of United States of America. And as I slide this to the right, it'll start to highlight and find more documents that are similar to United States of America. And you can see, depending on how steep the curve is, how far along it drops off, how similar, if it's really a close match or not. Let's see. So if I type in, let's try Royal Wedding Prince William Kate Middleton. So it looks like there's some of the documents that really talk about all these terms. There's not that many of them because this is a large data set that talks about a lot of things. But the ones that do, they're all fairly, they talk about it to the same degree, the same amount of relevance, the same amount of similarity. And lo and behold, they're over here where we expected them to be. Any questions so far about finding documents within the data set, searching for things, using the Galaxy, focusing, resetting our focus, outliering terms? Okay. So we'll move along to the next phase, which is groups. So I'm going to clear this. You'll see over on the right side, I have this panel here called groups. And groups are essentially just what the term says. It's a group. It's a group of documents. It's a group of documents that I want to group together, or the system has grouped together for me for whatever reason. So my groups that I create, I can group them together because I want to collect them and associate them together, maybe because they support a hypothesis, or maybe because they talk about a concept that I'm interested in, or maybe they talk about a location or an organization. So over on the right side, we have this groups panel, and if we expand out these list of folders, we can see some of the groups that the system has created for us. And that's what these little padlocks on the group folder mean, that these are system-generated groups. So what we actually did with this particular data set was we applied an entity extractor to the data before we gave it to you. So we identified key people, organizations, and locations in this data and created groups for them. Too many. Okay, locations. So we looked for all the things in this data that mentioned a location, and we created a group for them. So if I was interested in Egypt, I could click on my Egypt group. That's a really bad one. Afghanistan. And you can see that my group color next to it is red. So when I click on it, all the documents that contain or talk about Afghanistan are also now in red. And surprisingly enough, they're up here in the clusters for bin Laden, NATO forces, things like that. There's a few spattering ones down here in near the bottom. I can click on Tripoli. And again, they're up in that quadrant. Click on Britain. Well, they're also up in that quadrant. I can click on a couple of different groups, so Britain and Afghanistan. I can come down to the bottom where it says overlapping, and I can click on select, and it'll select all the documents that are essentially an overlap, so ones that talk about Afghanistan and Britain. So this is a way that I can, again, explore my data using some of the system-generated groups to try to find and discover things.
So I think it's kind of an important point in there. So we talked about earlier, we're not using NLP, but yet we really do now. As we've expanded, we're using the Stanford set for MIDI extraction, right? And then providing that as a front-end processor, so you could put more complex to it. A lot of the things that were discussed this morning, put that as a pre-processing step, and then create very customized groups based on what you're looking for within that and apply that onto the service. So there's a lot of capability that's being added in support of the NLP efforts as well.
We also have under themes, we have groups for all the themes that are mentioned in this data set. So if I was interested in President Robert Mugabe, I can click on that particular group. And where is he? Oh, he's right there. So the documents that talk about that theme are right there. So again, a theme is a group of terms that we didn't tell In-Spire group these together. In-Spire just determined these themes, these terms are used together a lot. So go ahead and create a group of them. We can look through some of these themes here. I'm going to sort this. Sort by number of documents. So these are the prominent themes that are in this data set. Tokyo Electric Power Company and reactor. We can probably guess what those are all about, but those have to do with the Japanese nuclear power plant with the tsunami, so they're all down here. What we can do, in addition to just exploring the groups that are here, is we can create our own groups. So what I can do is, let's just search for, let's see, what do I want to do? Let's search for prisoner. So here's some documents that I'll have to do with prisoner. And if I wanted to create a group, I can, of these 24 documents, I just hit the new group from selection button. It allows me to name my group and assign it a color. So I just say prisoners. Maybe I'm interested in Guantanamo Bay. I don't know how to spell it, so I'm going to use a wildcard. And it again, it highlights those. So now I'm going to do, again, new group from selection. And Guantanamo. So I can start to different things that I'm interested in. I can start to essentially create groups. And the groups will help me to find those documents later. If I see some documents that I want to come back to, maybe I want to use them as evidence. I want to use that as supporting references within a report that I'm writing. I might want to put them in a group so I can find them and come back to them later. I can also put my groups into a folder. So I don't have to create this flat list of groups, but I can create a somewhat organized hierarchy. So I might want to create groups that have to do with, we'll call them Dave's countries. Maybe I'm interested in a group about France. Whoops, I want to search for them first. Search for France, and I'm going to highlight Dave's countries. And when I create new group, it's going to put that group inside the Dave's countries folder.
If you don't have the right one highlighted, when you create a group, you just drag and drop it.
That's right. That's right. So I can do, I don't know, Spain. And I'll take that group, Spain. So for whatever reason, maybe I'm interested in some of the European countries, and I want to just kind of have a quick reference to those documents that talk about or mention a certain country. So I can essentially do that and start to group them together. So what I can also do is I can use groups maybe to find documents that support or refute a hypothesis that I have. So I might want to create a folder called hypothesis, if I knew how to spell it. And maybe I want to create a group in here called support. And maybe the other way that I can add documents to a group is when I'm reading them in the document viewer. So maybe this Spain beefs up security. I can click on Add to Group, and I can add that to my hypothesis. Oh, it's already in my support group. Let's see. Maybe I find this document over here. I want to add it to my support hypothesis group. I just select it and say OK. So this is a way that I might want to explore documents in my Galaxy. Oh, this document doesn't have anything to do with my hypothesis, or maybe it refutes my hypothesis. So I can add a group called refutes. And I'll add it to my refute group. So I can keep building up these groups to help find documents, essentially mark them as things that I'm interested in. I can also go ahead and in the text, oh, well, this guy, Mike O'Sullivan, yeah, he refutes my hypothesis. Anytime he writes something, I disagree. So I can say add note, and I can say, yeah, this guy refutes my hypothesis. So it's a way where I can add notes so that maybe when I come back to this document later, I can say, oh, why did I put this document in this group? What is this? Why was this document important to me? I can start to annotate them and look at it that way too. This is a really important way that analysts typically use In-Spire, especially when they're first getting started with it. It kind of goes back to what Richard mentioned before with the shoebox, that they might find documents or concepts of interest, and they want to put them in their shoebox so they can find them later to essentially see how those documents are going to help them later. So they'll create this shoebox, essentially, of folders and groups. And these groups are not mutually exclusive. It's not like once you put a document in one group, you can't put it in another one. With the shoebox, you're kind of forced to have to put things in one slot. But you can essentially organize and categorize your documents however you'd like to. So what I'd like you to do as a little exercise here is let's pretend that you're interested in nuclear power plants. And after the disaster at Fukushima, there's been lots of talk within the press as to different countries that are going to abandon their plans for building new nuclear power plants, and there's other countries that are still going forth with wanting to build new nuclear power plants. So come up with a hypothesis that maybe is all nuclear plants are going to cease being constructed or are going to continue being constructed, and try to find some documents that will support or refute that hypothesis, and put those documents in a group. Maybe create a group that's called supports, and another one called refutes. Or maybe you want to create some groups that talk about just what different countries, what their opinions are on this topic. So maybe France has one opinion versus China has another opinion. And you want to collect all the China nuclear plant documents and put them in a folder, or put them in a group rather. So again, use the groups to help try to find ways to look for evidence, look for key documents in your data set, and see what you can find.
We've covered a few tools and some simple techniques, so by all means, raise your hand if you have any questions, or you're trying to remember how to do something that Dave pointed out, so we can find you and help walk through the process.
Yes?
Are you able to excuse me, cross-reference? So, for example, if I find an author with a particular subset of articles are of interest, how would I then cross-reference and say, okay, what other authors have talked about a similar or same topic?
So that's actually what we're going to do next.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Yep, it's fine. So you can actually do it.
It's all right.
No, it's fine. I'll show you right now, though. You can, if you use the facets tool, for instance. Facets essentially allows you to look at different categories in conjunction with each other. So when you click on, for instance, Lisa Schlein, she's selected right now. These are the themes that are in conjunction with her. These are the locations that she talks about. So as you clicked on, if you click on Lisa a second, it'll reset. It should reset. Just hit clear at the top. Okay, so here it brings up all the authors, all the themes. So you can essentially, if you wanted to click on Tokyo Electric, these are all the authors that are talking about Tokyo Electric, and those are locations. So it's one way to do it. There's also other ways to do it, but this is the most common way of doing it.
Thank you.
Yes.
Starlight also started. Starlight team.
You can create folders within folders. You cannot. That's a limitation that's been in there for a long time. Yeah, you can.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah.
No, you have to create all your folders at the top level.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So we get the future point system.
There has to be a baseline within yeah, because the folders are absolutely. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Yeah. Let's see, which one was that?
You're the one that created this one.
But if you were to use that little arrow right there, narrow that over.
No, so let's. Well, it doesn't have to be that way, because that's the one you search. You want to move that folder, you want to move that, just grab it and drag it. Yeah. Now let's try saying that.
Yeah, so what you want to do first is to create a group. So if you were to hit
The high level ones are another group.
yeah, so you first you have your folder, and inside the folder you create the actual groups.
Inside that you have the groups.
So now that will,
Yeah.
now you can name that to keep.
Yeah, that should, I don't,
And there you go. So now this group is showing you that there's 696
Yeah.
documents inside that, which is exactly what I selected. Yeah.
Okay. Is there a way, so we have a little problem, when she created a new group, it's not immediately updating so that under the document readers, that group doesn't show up, she just created it? You got the same thing? Okay.
So what that means is that it's only going to show you the groups that that document doesn't already belong to. So that if you create a group, that documents, those documents are already in that group. So what I neglected to show you, was to create empty groups, which is to clear your selection, and then to click on the button that says to clear your selection. Yeah. Okay, so you go up to the very top. Oh, so you want to get, you want to do yeah. Okay, so. No, I think it's probably easiest just to let you right click on it again. I'm sorry. Yeah, where you were right where you were before on the nuclear, on the right. Down in the group tool. Right, you could say remove selection from group. Right there. And that will empty out that group. So now it's 0. So now you can go and just read individual documents and add them. Yeah. So that's just going to add the one document. Yep. Okay, perfect.
You guys hear that? Okay.
Yeah. Right, so now you want to click on the add to group, and it will show you which group essentially you want to add to, so that it supports your reviews. So now that group has the one document. So as you're stacking through, you can add them to whichever belongs to. So I'll let you know that when you're working through the Alderwood data set, which is kind of the challenge problem at the end, this is a key concept to helping to solve that data set. It's essentially finding documents and grouping them to save them for later, to helping to find and recognize what those key documents are, associating them with evidence that might be contained within those documents. So this is a very common way for analysts to go and find documents, save them, use them later.
David?
Yes?
Is it possible to deselect, after you've done your search, to deselect individual documents from your folder?
Well,
can I have a folder that is after I've relied upon the search and then doing some manual?
so the easiest, I mean, you can, if you right-click on the group, you can always say remove selection from group if you just had certain ones selected. But unfortunately, they're all selected probably in that document viewer. What you could also do is that little button that's not labeled next to add to group, that little color thing, that's actually removed from group.
Okay.
So you can remove an individual document one at a time from the group.
But I can go and reset the search, can I, at any time? If it's here. So if this is my search here, and it's got 329, if I go and delete, say, 20 documents, but then I later decide I do need them, I can just go and...
You can reissue the search that way. Yep, absolutely.
Someone has created a new group here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So by creating groups, what it's going to do is by default you've got all those documents selected, so it's going to put all those documents into this group.
Now, so it's just this group. How do I get to this group?
So actually, since you, so it didn't since you highlighted, you want to get down to it, you have to focus. And then that will be good. And then got rid of all the others. But again, you find, so like if you look at it, you see a lot of terms that were no longer significant. They were significant for purpose, but now they generally just a small area might be really dominant no longer a distinguishing term. Right. That's when you go and say, pull those out, or it has the same. You say, well, this is really what I care about. Up here, it's in the file, it's actually saving this on the data set. And we can go through and talk to each other.
I think those are the X mark. Okay.
Some subset. So you're going to create a subset that you're do that. Make it shorter. By default, do that long name is also a subset.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, just access so that something short. And just say, you can go through, you do this, you can go through and find which term you want to do. You can go through this one. So you should be able to go out and go to.
So we've got a break schedule.
Okay.
So I think
Oh, yeah, so right now.
good to clear the area.
Okay,
Clear
this
the room.
would probably be a, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, it's going around and around, so it's prompt.
We could even do that a little early whenever this exercise ends here. We can
Right,
jump in and do that.
however
So that's
it fits into
perfect.
what you're doing,
That's
yeah.
actually right here was kind of where I was timing to have the coffee break anyway. So that's
Oh right, and you got up to
and
there.
we just got up to there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is actually perfect. Yes. We'll just talk about what we found here and then we'll go and take one. How about that?
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, okay. That's the way for them to say, this group of documents, this meaning to me, this group of this is the way it's going to work. But since it's just, the document, you can have the document. Yeah. And yeah, we can do searches for documents that or review documents. So actually built into here, we don't talk about it, but for our pages, for supporting analysis, that's the process.
Yeah, I mean, that's like,
There are tools in there that can support that, so they'll choose those tools to use those. Yeah.
Is there a way in which you can select multiple documents? No.
In the document viewer, there's not. No. Yes.
Now I would like to restrict it to some companies. So can I make
So one way that you can do that is you create a group for your nuclear plant search. So essentially, to create a group that's create it that way. Yeah.
yeah. Sorry.
And then you can select that, and then you go down the control key, you can select a particular country, and then this overlapping will become enabled. You can select, and it'll show you just the documents that are in common between.
They are.
If there are already, yeah. So in this case, there aren't any highlights. That's one way to do it. There's lots of different ways to do it.
You still need humans to sign.
Yes.
How does it recognize names? How do you have to clear the names?
So we use the entity extractor. We use the Stanford NLP.
That's
Okay.
all names conceptually.
I believe so.
It's interesting to come up with well, this one was a name as well as a.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. It's not the smartest of libraries. It was just a crude tool to try to get something. So, yep.
Do you know why it has duplicates sometimes? So, for instance, same documents,
Same
Just
document is it's
slightly different time.
yeah, the same document I guess was just in our corpus more than once.
Okay.
That's
Do you have any sort of deduping?
we don't right now. That is something that's a research area that we are working on because that's something we get asked all the time.
Is there any sort of, again, maybe similar to the cross-reference question with sort of document similarity, or is that expressed through the Galaxy view?
It's expressed through the Galaxy view
So-
and also the query by example. So if you were to, for example, select all the text in this document, you can do a query by example to find all of the documents that were talked about similar. If you go to advanced search and then go to by example, and then just clear that and paste.
I think we were also doing that. That's what I learned that they rescheduled.
Oops.
Sorry.
Too many clicks.
There we go.
It's going kind of slow there, but that is one way to do it.
Can
Yeah.
I didn't actually ask my missed the bit about the galaxy view. So if I just sort of reset this, well, in fact, it doesn't really matter. But
Okay.
what does the sort of positioning and proximity represent there?
So the positioning itself, the only thing that it tells you is that the closer together documents are, the closer the dots will be together. Their absolute XY position means nothing.
When you say the closer they are together, you mean in terms of their content similarity, or
Right, in terms of the types of words that are used and then the topics that are represented in them. So these two...
So that's a sort of secondary, so not necessarily exactly the same, but if it's identified in the content, a list of themes and a list of words, that's then used to cross-reference the similarities.
Yes.
Okay.
So if you had two identical documents, the dots will actually be stacked on top of each other, and you would know it. But two documents that are just off by a little bit will just be offset by a little bit, because they'll probably use a couple words in common or a couple words different from each other.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. I don't know if you can see it twice as, but what it attempts to do is disperse the clusters as far apart as possible. So it put that one so far out because it's the most different from the rest of the documents there. So if you have less than 15 documents, there's not enough math essentially to cluster them. So it just organizes them. Yeah, but as long as you have more than 15 documents, it will attempt to just use a key means clustering algorithm and then project them. So it disperses those clusters to take up the maximum amount of space.
Just because we, if you did it between
the axes are really meaningless. The only thing you can really glean is that they're as different as they can possibly be. So yeah, it's the closer together, the more similar they are. The farther apart, the more different they are. But the actual axes that they're plotted on, it's just an arbitrary projection. 200 dimensions. So just whatever the math comes out. Okay, sure.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point.
So we're about right up until a coffee break here. So let's just discuss real quick if anybody found any key documents that support or refute the hypothesis at all. Anybody find that China wants to go ahead and keep building, but some European countries are being more cautious about it? Okay. There's been a couple questions about in the galaxy view. What do the axes mean? What does it mean for the dots to be up here versus down there versus close to each other versus far apart? And it's kind of a cop-out of an answer, but they really mean nothing. Other than the closer together the dots are, the more topically similar those documents are. The farther apart they are, the more topically different those documents are. The actual axes don't really mean anything. It's just what happens when you take 200 dimensions and you project it down to 2. The one thing I can tell you is that the terms that In-Spire picks, they're considered discriminatory. Yeah, that word. So if you have a corpus of documents and every single document contains the words nuclear power, In-Spire is not going to pick those words because those words aren't going to help you to discriminate one document from another because they all talk about nuclear power. It's going to essentially pick words that will help to separate that corpus and to break it up into different groupings. I think the real math is that it has to be in no more than 70%, but at least 30% of the words to be considered a major topic or something like that. So that's kind of some of the reasoning behind some of the locations on the screen, some of the words that are picked, why things cluster together, why some clusters are together. If you have less than 15 documents in your selection, you might notice it's just a circle. There's not enough math to be able to cluster and project those, so In-Spire just displays them to you in however it can. So once you have more than 15, it'll start to disperse them. Any questions? So at this point, we're up to a coffee break at 3 o'clock here. So why don't we take a little break? We'll get back together. We'll talk finally about the time tool and the facets tool. And then we'll get into exploring and trying to solve the Alderwood data set. So I don't know how long coffee break. So anybody have any objections if I kind of just iterate the solution? I think at this point. We only have about 10 minutes left here before we're due to end. So this is the actual data set that I used when I was given this problem to solve, because I didn't know the answer ahead of time either. I was essentially given all the information that you had, and I organized it essentially around what I thought were key ideas. And I essentially started off, let's see, where's my, oops. I had my key document that I started with, like everybody else, with our intoxicated driver. And I essentially did a lot of searches, just like I was hinting at you guys to do. And these were some of the key topics that I identified in the data set that might be related. And you can, if you've worked through it, you can kind of tell that some of those are dead ends right off the bat, but I still went down them anyway. Mad cow disease is represented pretty heavily in this data set, but it has nothing to do with the problem. There's another family in here called Boynton that is referenced on the map, I think as operating something, or maybe, yeah, they have a beef lab and some other labs. They have nothing to do with anything that's in the problem. But a lot of the other things that are in here do, and really the key it had to do with the shining futures was certainly a key piece of it to realize the linkage between that and the Parazuela group. And then this whole stuff with smelling flowers leading you to this chemical spill, that the symptoms of that spill, so the burns, the respiratory illness to lead you to the dock incident. What was going on at that dock to try to figure out what that had to do with Parazuela, and this mention of apples. And the solution that I came up with for this, which I believe is the correct one, someone told me it was the right one, was that essentially the Prado family was involved with wanting to lead this rebellion, and they wanted to poison the food supply in this group with contaminated apples. And those apples were contaminated with this stuff called lewisite at the plant. So lewisite was mentioned in a few of the documents and being associated with the plant. There were references in the plant for trucks driving in the middle of the night. The truck driver who drove into the bank was seen in the middle of the night. At least that's when the incident happened. So that was supposed to be a clue to help you discover that there's some weird things going on at this plant with the Prado family, some chemicals, and some apples in the middle of the night, ending up at this dock to get on a boat to Parazuela, which there's nothing in there that really says the apples were going to be used as a weapon. There was nothing in there that says the Prado family was directly involved. But part of the challenge, I think, of being an analyst, and especially in like an intelligence analyst, is that all the facts aren't necessarily handed to you on a plate. You kind of have to, maybe assume some things or just extrapolate some facts to kind of draw those connections and connect them together. So again, I made groups for what I thought were the key ideas, and then I created groups for what I considered the evidence. So the things that tied certain groups together. So I created a group to highlight the document that said the shining futures had to do with the rebel group in Parazuela. And if I select that group, it was mentioned in this particular document here. The fact that Prado was associated with respiratory and lesions was mentioned in this document here. So if I were to highlight all of these groups, actually Boynton was a false lead. We'll get rid of that one. These are essentially the key documents. And the whole rest of the data set was interesting. There were some interesting things in there, but really it was the facts contained within these documents, the follow the thread through these particular documents.
Is it not a bit strong to assume that Ramon and George are related just because they have the same surname?
So it's never explicitly said. Somewhere it says that two of the Prados are brothers. It does say that they're but there's 3 Prados, if I remember right. Yeah, so it doesn't explicitly say. You just have to maybe assume that. But 2 of them are mentioned as being brothers. The security guard and the farmer, I believe, are mentioned as being brothers. Anybody else have any comments, insights, things they want to share about working through this? Using the tool in general. Yes?
Well, one thing strikes me, at some point or other, I think I've written all of those documents, and you can explain how you have that vision.
To do it,
What I found is that I spend 90% of my time doing cases. And so, as an example, being a visual analysis example, instead of looking to see.
yeah.
Because the example wasn't.
There's this. Sure, there's aspects of this particular problem that lend themselves okay to In-Spire, but they're not. It's not a perfect example for In-Spire. So I'll certainly grant you that is a worthwhile comment. Interestingly enough, there is this theme that comes up. What was the name of it? There was a theme that was. It's here somewhere. Oh, Apples and Prado. Yeah, it's this one here. If you actually selected all the documents in this theme, it actually highlights all of the key documents in this data set. And it's like finding a needle in a haystack. But some of the algorithms that are behind In-Spire somehow knew to group those 5 key documents together without us telling it anything about it. But it is interesting that they do come up together. But you're right, there's not a lot of application besides searching and browsing of using In-Spire. The only other comment I'd make is that if you wanted to use this perhaps as you can almost use it maybe as a reporting tool. Come on. That if you organize your groups, you might be able to see a significant timeline of how those things happened, how those things might be correlated with each other. This is perhaps a visual way, but it's not, again, it's not using it necessarily to solve the problem.
Actually, that was what I was attempting visually. That was the thing I was trying to see with the timeline.
Yeah.
I didn't manage to.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else? Yes?
David, is this...
Oh, just a second.
The other comment that I would make is that it'd be great to have this, but my preference would be to have a silo breaker sort of interface as well on top of this.
A what kind of interface?
A silo breaker where you can actually click on the objects which shows the connection.
Oh, I see. Sure.
So you can actually see the connections and the word links between the documents visually and then move it around that way.
Okay.
It's a lot more powerful way to understand the data. I mean, the searching is
Interesting.
great.
Sure. Sure. Yes.
Just, is this scenario sort of classroom made? Is it based on a representative?
So this is this is
you know, the names have been changed to
it's
protect the guilty.
exactly. It's entirely fictitious.
Oh, it is.
But the actual some of the actual text was taken from real news articles and then just manipulated to protect the innocents.
I think what I enjoyed about the scenario is the fact clearly there's a lot of red herrings in there that are quite easy to chase down.
Yes. Yes, the
So
whole.
he's trying to excuse himself, but so the comment made about the sort of the only loose tie really being what is might seem to be quite a common South American surname and some loose apple connections. I wondered if, when you ran through this before, if you did augment other tools to provide any sort of network analysis or anything like that, or did the users?
There really isn't anything in In-Spire that allows you to do a network analysis or a semantic tool. So yeah, but certainly something like that to diagram out relationships by hand or using another tool might help you to do that.
I will say, just to balance it up as well, I think we get very quickly spoiled on that kind of those sorts of technologies as well. But at the same time, it's quite nice to go back to old-fashioned pen and paper. It disciplines you to read the documents. Thank you.
Sure. Yes. Anybody else? Comments, observations, In-Spire in general?
Thank you all.
All right. Well, thank you.
Like I say, yeah.
Sorry for the little technical hiccups in the middle there, but thanks for persevering with us, and we got through it.
So In-Spire is a tool that's been designed to meet certain needs, and this is a good example. But I think you're absolutely right that there are aspects of this that it's more. This problem is more of a search and retrieve sort of problem, so it might not be a perfect match. But it did illustrate some things that William talked about this morning when he talked about multiple jigsaw puzzles and not knowing which pieces go where. And that's kind of the idea behind the misleading directions that you can take within this data set. So thank you very much. Hope you had a chance to see the tool. I know you get to see I2 and some other tools as well, so you get a good chance to see some of the different ones and some different capabilities. So we appreciate your time.
David?